This video is brought to you by True Tales of Buried Treasure, the largest collection of old treasure magazines in the West. On our website, you can search for individual treasure stories by region, or buy our original magazines themselves. To pay us a visit, please click on the link in the description. Enjoy. The scant surviving records of Joseph R. de Prefontaine offer no indication that he might have been involved in a brutal robbery and murder, an event that led to the disappearance of $12,000 in gold and silver near Lyons, Kansas. Yet, few doubt that much of this treasure remains hidden. Verified by early traders along the Santa Fe Trail, the lost fortune has been sought for over 130 years, but it continues to elude even the most determined treasure hunters. Most past searches have been concentrated near the Arkansas and Little Arkansas rivers, close to Lyons. However, extensive research suggests that the hoard was actually hidden along Cow Creek. When it vanished in 1843, it comprised $10,000 in gold coins and $2,000 in silver. With gold now valued at around $165 per ounce, the treasure's worth has multiplied many times over. More significantly, its historical value renders it virtually priceless. If it were ever unearthed, Joseph R. de Prefontaine would likely groan in his forgotten grave, for it is doubtful he ever spent a single coin of it. He narrowly escaped execution by hanging, spared only by a presidential pardon. Westport, Missouri served as a major departure point for the Santa Fe Trail. Merchants there were shocked to learn that de Prefontaine had taken part in one of the most notorious robberies on the trail, as their records depicted him as a family man. Logbooks revealed that over the course of a year, he had purchased a pair of men's shoes, a pair of women's shoes, 2 pairs of boots, and 6 pairs of children's shoes. De Prefontaine first appeared in historical records around 1836, arriving in St. Louis on his way west. He quickly found work and stayed in the city for several years, earning a living. However, he was always driven by the dream of striking it rich in gold. He eventually secured a position as the manager of a theater, a job that could have provided him with a stable life, had it not been for the presence of a saloon within the establishment. In addition to fathering children, drinking seemed to be de Prefontaine's favorite pastime. The theater attracted St. Louis's more refined citizens who attended lectures, operas, and Shakespearean plays in pursuit of culture. However, de Prefontaine found such performances utterly tedious. Night after night, as the theater filled, he would retreat to the saloon, reveling in the rowdy company of frontier men and weary husbands who sought escape while their wives absorbed the arts. His downfall in St. Louis came on the opening night of Hamlet. With the theater packed and the saloon bustling with intoxicated patrons, de Prefontaine, emboldened by liquor, decided to put on a performance of his own. Climbing onto a table, he began loudly reciting Shakespearean lines, mixing them with jabs at St. Louis's cultural pretensions. The drunken crowd cheered and applauded, creating such a racket that the actual play had to be stopped. The actors' voices were drowned out by de Prefontaine's impromptu rendition of Hamlet. A group of stern-faced men marched from the theater into the saloon, just as de Prefontaine was reaching a dramatic peak. Without a word, they seized him by the collar and tossed him into the dirt street outside. "Don't set foot in there again," they warned. "If you do, we'll blow the top of your head off." With that, they returned to their seats, and the show resumed. De Prefontaine, bruised and disheveled, picked himself up and staggered home to his wife and well-shod children. When he sobered up, he realized he had been fired and disgraced. It hardly troubled him. In his mind, this was the perfect moment to head west, where he was convinced his fortune in gold awaited. He wondered why he had even lingered in St. Louis when the real frontier began just beyond the Missouri River. Westport was a bustling hub for wagon trains embarking on the journey to Santa Fe. The town thrived on trade, its streets lined with wagon factories and stores selling supplies for westward-bound travelers. De Prefontaine was immediately captivated by the town's energy. He felt a thrill watching traders struggle to unload heavy kegs from their wagons, for he quickly learned that many of these kegs were filled with gold returning from Santa Fe. One day, he vowed, he would have his share of that fortune. He soon became a regular at Daniel Yoakum's two-story log tavern, a favored gathering place for traders and teamsters. Here, he spent long afternoons and late nights, listening for opportunities to join a westbound wagon train. The tavern was the perfect place to make connections. Conversations revolved around the latest caravan movements, the amount of gold each train carried, and the number of men guarding it. Westport's economy revolved around freighting, and de Prefontaine never tired of hearing freighters recount their perilous adventures. With each passing day, his hunger for gold grew stronger. On an afternoon in 1843, he was seated at a tavern table, drinking, when a whiskered friend shared news of an unusual caravan that had departed from Santa Fe that February. It was said to be the bravest group ever to cross the plains. For a year, bands of Texans had been scouring the prairies, ambushing Mexican trading expeditions. The Republic of Texas was teetering on the edge of war with Mexico, and raiding these wealthy traders was seen as a badge of honor among the Texans. Despite these dangerous conditions, a Mexican caravan consisting of just 2 wagons had set out eastward from Santa Fe. The caravan belonged to the wealthy and influential Don Antonio Jose Chavez, a member of a powerful Santa Fe family. His father had served as governor in 1823 and his brother in 1835. Accompanying Chavez were 5 servants and 55 mules, some intended for trade along the journey. His plan was to sell any surviving animals in Westport. The wagons carried an astonishing $12,000 in gold and silver, yet there was not a single guard to protect them. Before the night in the tavern was over, de Prefontaine had been drawn into a scheme to relieve Don Antonio Jose Chavez of his fortune. A stranger had approached de Prefontaine and his drinking companion, joining them at the table. His name was Jack McDaniel, and he claimed to hold a captain's commission from Texas, tasked with assembling a force to attack Mexican supply trains, a prelude, he said, to capturing Santa Fe. With him was his son David. However, rather than being official agents of Texas, the pair were more likely common desperados, much like the criminals who frequently gathered at Yakbam's tavern to plot robberies and other crimes. McDaniel proposed that de Prefontaine and his bewhiskered friend join his venture to seize the small Mexican caravan. He promised a rich haul, enough to make them all wealthy. The idea excited de Prefontaine, and by midnight, 15 rough men had been recruited for the deed. Most of the gang were seasoned outlaws, horse thieves, highwaymen, and murderers who preyed on travelers for their gold. Before sunrise, the band rode out of Westport following the Santa Fe Trail to intercept Chavez's treasure-laden wagons. From the beginning, Don Antonio Jose Chavez's journey had been plagued with hardship. 10 days out of Santa Fe, the skies darkened, and a brutal cold wind howled across the plains. Freezing rain and heavy snow followed, biting into the travelers with merciless force. Frostbite and exhaustion soon overcame them, but they pressed on. Then the animals began to falter. With each mile, the bone-chilling wind claimed more mules. Finally, only 5 remained standing. Left with no other choice, Chavez abandoned one of the wagons, carefully transferring its contents to the remaining one. He took extra care to conceal the gold and silver beneath the floorboards, hoping it would be difficult to find. By April 10th, the caravan reached Cow Creek Crossing, west of present-day Lyons, roughly midway between the Arkansas River and the Little Arkansas. They halted there, desperate for rest and shelter, before continuing their journey. The site was a favored resting place for traders. As Chavez surveyed the land, a sense of hope stirred within him. There was ample water, and game was plentiful. They could construct a makeshift shelter beside the wagon and endure the storm with minimal hardship. The dangers seemed minimal, perhaps only a faint risk of encountering a wandering band of Indians. Even that, he thought, was unlikely. Only a fool would be roaming the plains in such dreadful weather. Seated near a fire, Chavez warmed himself as his servants busied themselves unloading kettles and pans. Soon, food would be cooking over the flames. Then, from the corner of his eye, Chavez noticed movement atop a distant rise beyond Cow Creek. His hand instinctively went to his rifle. For several long minutes, he remained still, his gaze fixed on the distant figures. Then, after careful observation, he exhaled in relief and lowered his weapon. The horsemen approaching were not Indians. Their mounts were too well fed, too steady. He reasoned that they must be fellow travelers from Westport, also making their way to Santa Fe. Turning to his servants, he gestured toward the approaching riders. "Look, we have company," he said. "Prepare extra food for our unexpected guests." The servants, reassured by the presence of additional travelers, felt a surge of relief. With more men in camp, they believed they could fend off any attack from hostile tribes. Their fears subsided as they watched the riders draw nearer, unaware of the deadly scheme unfolding against them. Eager to offer their unexpected guests a warm meal, the servants hurried to prepare hot food and drinks. As they rode down the slope toward the camp, John McDaniel turned to de Prefontaine with a growl. "That might not be them," he muttered. "They should have 2 wagons, but I only see 1. "There's only one way to find out," de Prefontaine replied. "Let's ride in and see." Spurring their horses, the men galloped down the hill and into Don Antonio José Chavez's camp. The unsuspecting Chavez welcomed the horsemen with open arms, inviting them to dismount and share a meal. But before he could react, he found himself staring down the barrels of rifles and pistols. Without warning, McDaniel's gang had drawn their weapons on him. The bandits demanded his gold and silver, but Chavez denied bringing any from Santa Fe. The outlaws laughed at his claim and wasted no time tearing through the wagon, tossing its contents onto the ground as the helpless Chavez and his wide-eyed servants looked on. Within an hour, the thieves uncovered about $5,000 in gold and silver. Fearful that soldiers from Westport might be trailing them, 7 of the bandits took their share and rode off into the distance, vanishing along Cow Creek. Once away from the camp, they hurriedly buried most of the stolen treasure, planning to return for it when the danger had passed. Then they fled. Meanwhile, the remaining outlaws were determined to find the rest of the loot. For 2 days, they ransacked the camp, while Chavez stubbornly insisted there was no more gold. At last, they discovered it, hidden inside an old trunk that Chavez had carefully concealed. With the treasure now in their possession, the bandits led Chavez away from the road. 4 of them raised their pistols and fired, the bullets tearing into his body and blowing off his head. After looting his pockets for any remaining gold, they tossed his lifeless body into a ravine and shoved the wagon in after it. Rumors soon spread that the wagon still held gold undiscovered by the murderers, its fortune buried beneath the wreckage at the bottom of the ravine. Before fleeing, the outlaws caught one of the mules and loaded some of the stolen gold onto its back. But as they rode off, their luck turned. Riders appeared on the horizon, soldiers galloping hard in pursuit. Slowed down by the burdened mule, the outlaws were forced to stash much of the treasure along the way and flee. 10 of them, including the McDaniel brothers and de Prefontaine, were captured. Justice was swift. John and David McDaniel were sentenced to hang, their necks snapping as they swung from the gallows. De Prefontaine, however, somehow managed to secure a presidential pardon, escaping his fate. The remaining outlaws received long prison sentences. Despite their arrests, most of the treasure was never recovered. When captured, the bandits had only a small portion of gold in their pockets. The story of the robbery spread among Santa Fe travelers, yet accounts of the treasure's final resting place varied wildly. Some insisted it was buried along the banks of the Arkansas River, while others swore it lay near the Little Arkansas River. Why the disagreement? No one could say. The fate of Chavez's 5 servants also remains a mystery. Some speculated that they managed to escape, taking a portion of the stolen gold with them and hiding it before the bandits could claim it. Over the years, countless fortune seekers have scoured the banks of both rivers in search of Chavez's lost treasure. But lesser known, yet equally reliable accounts suggest that the gold was actually hidden near Cow Creek Crossing, west of Lyons. For those still hoping to uncover one of Kansas's richest lost treasures, Cow Creek may hold the key. While the Arkansas and Little Arkansas rivers have drawn treasure hunters for generations, Cow Creek has remained largely overlooked. Perhaps after all these years, the long-forgotten fortune still lies buried there, waiting to be found. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to read the original article or purchase the magazine from which it was taken, please check out our website, truetalesofburiedtreasure.com.